A fresh morning and a warm welcome to everyone to the third day of the 5-day FTP program on machine learning algorithms for 5G mobile networks. I am very much elated to introduce the first speaker of the day. Dr. V. Marsilamani is currently an associate professor and head of the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at IIITDM Kanjipuram. He has received his PhD in Computer Science and Engineering from IIT Madras and MTech in Computer Science and Data Processing from IIT Kharagpur. He has 12 years of research experience and 18 years of teaching experience. His research areas include digital image processing, computer vision, machine learning, and also theoretical computer science. He has published several research papers in national and international journals and conferences. He has several funded projects from industry and also from the government. He is member of DOS for several universities and institutes. He has delivered several invited talks in workshops and conferences. He conducted several faculty development programs and also delivered lectures in FTP organized by various institutes. He has visited many countries to present research papers. Apart from guiding several BTech and MTech project students, he has guided 3 PhD scholars and currently guiding 4 PhD scholars. Welcome, sir. Without any further ado, I hand over the session to the speaker.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you for accepting our invitation, sir. Please start your session, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Is my screen visible, sir?
Yes, sir. Visible, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. Good morning to you all. May I know the kind of participants who are attending? How many are doing PhDs? How many have completed PhDs? You can maybe switch on your mic and speak, just to know your interest and your level, so that I can pitch my talk accordingly. Selvaraj sir, you have allowed participants to speak, right?
Yes, sir. Definitely. They can turn on their mic and speak.
Yeah. Is there anybody who has done PhD?
Good morning, sir. I'm Dr. Sangeeta here.
Yeah.
I'm working as associate professor in VIT. Out of my interest, I have joined in this FTP, sir.
Okay. So I completed PhD in which area, ma'am?
Optical networks.
Optical networks. Okay.
Good morning, sir. My name is Ajay Kumar Reddy. I am a PhD scholar at IIITDM Kanchipuram. My research area includes virtual reality image quality assessment.
Oh, image quality.
Yes.
Yeah, which means I got 2 samples, one in image processing, the other one not in image processing. Maybe I'll try to keep my talk as simple as possible, so that the prerequisites are not required for understanding this talk. So if you find it difficult to understand any point at any point in time, please stop me. We'll go slowly. Otherwise, speaking for 2 hours will be difficult for me, and listening to me for 2 hours difficult for you as well. Right. So let us look at the topic for today's talk: machine learning algorithms for image quality assessment. And we will see first image quality. What is image quality? We will see. Then we will see why we need to assess the quality of the image. And then we will see some applications of image quality assessment algorithms. And we will also see the factors affecting the image quality. We will see. Then we will look at some attributes considered for IQA, through which we will assess the quality. Then we will see some major types of image quality assessment, like full reference, no reference, and partial reference. 3 types are there. 2 are mentioned here, but in fact there are 3 types. And then we will see a couple of machine learning algorithms. One is for assessing the quality of image. The other one is to apply the image quality assessment to solve some real world problem. The real world problem is that the screen captured video detection. For example, if the high budget movie is screened in some theater, and somebody is going and paying just 100 rupees and watching a movie there in the theater, and he is capturing the complete movie in his mobile phone, and then coming out and uploading into some social media website, and if everybody is downloading and watching, then the one who has produced the movies will go in last, right? Not many people will go to theater afterwards, so they will all be watching, right? So how do you find the video which is displayed is screen captured or not? And you may ask, then where to use this? Suppose let's say YouTube or Facebook, whatever the social media sites, they want to use this algorithm, they can use this to stop uploading such screen captured videos. So for that, the bottleneck is that whether the given video is screen captured or not, it needs to be detected. Once it is detected, the rest of the process is quite obvious, and they can stop uploading such videos. Thereby, we can avoid at least the distribution of such a screen captured video. We will see that. Let us look at the very basic question first. What do we mean by image quality? We just look at these two images, image 1 and image 2. And anybody who sees these two images will say that image 2 is of bad quality compared to image 1. Even if image 2 alone is given, image 1 is not known, still we will say quality of image 2 is bad. You can see that it is blurred. And how do we say that it is bad? Because our eyes have seen good quality images and bad quality images in the past, and that difference is remembered by our brain. Therefore, when an image is presented to us, we are able to tell given image is good quality or bad quality. Of course, if the reference image is also given, it is very easy to find because it is of good quality. The first one is of good quality, the second one is of bad quality or poor quality. But even if there is no reference image given, even in that case also you will be able to tell the given image is good or not because of the information that is learned and stored in the brain. So therefore, the image quality problem goes like this. Given the image, find the level of accuracy in the image. That is called as image quality assessment. Let us look at the need for image quality assessment. Why do we need to look at the image quality assessment? Who cares whether this image is good or bad? Why do you need to tell that? In image processing domain, there are algorithms called image enhancement algorithms. Image enhancement algorithms. So what does it mean? The algorithm is called as image enhancement algorithm. If it takes an image and gives better quality image. Let's say the eye is my face image, and eye prime should be my face image only, but it should be looking better visually. Such algorithms are called as image enhancement algorithms. Many of such image enhancement algorithms are iterative algorithms. What does it mean? It will do same set of operations again and again till some condition fails. As long as that condition is correct, true, the iteration will continue. So to define the termination condition, we can use this image quality assessment. Suppose my algorithm, image quality assessment algorithm says that the eye prime which is produced is of good quality, then the image enhancement algorithm will stop further enhancing. So whenever the image enhancement algorithm is iterative algorithm, to stop going to the next iteration, we can give the criteria, stopping criteria, which is based on the IQ analysis or IQ prediction. And second requirement, better image quality is required for the better diagnostic in computer tomography. In general, not just in CT, be it MRI, be it any other imaging modality. There, if you want to detect the abnormal things like cancer or blood clot or whatever, we need to have the better image, good quality image. If the image is fully noise, and the sensor that is used is producing lots of noise in that, and or the contrast is very poor, or whatever reason could be, because of that the image quality is bad, then the diagnosis will suffer. So therefore it is required to have the better image, better quality image. So then how do we use this in practice? See, if the scanner is capturing one image, and if our algorithm, image quality assessment algorithm is running on that, and if it says that the image quality is good, then it will go to the expert for the diagnosis purpose directly, or maybe automatic way of diagnosis can be done automatically, right? Suppose our algorithm says no, it is not of good quality, then the scanner will again take another image of the same subject. So in that case, it will be useful. And this one, all of you know, the set-top box based application, right? When it is raining or it is windy, sometime the signal quality will be very bad, strength will be bad. You have seen your TV, right? So how it is done basically, in set-top box memory, some sample images will be there. Let's say one single sample image, let us consider. I will be sample image available in set-top box. And the same I will be transmitted through every video sequence, that is video signal that is coming to the TV. How? You may be asking, when cricket telecast is happening, and only the frames related to the stadium alone will come. How this I come, when it will come, you may ask. This will be embedded somewhere in the video, such a way that the video quality is not affected. So that's possible. So therefore, in any transmitted signal to the TV, whatever image that was stored as a sample image in the set-top box will be transmitted. And do you think that this I and I will be the same? Expected to be same, but it will be different. You know why? Because of the transmission issues. While it is getting transmitted, because of the nature, like, if it is windy, or if it is lightning, or whatever other natural issues, and all that, will affect the transmission and the receiving capability also. And because of that, what you receive is I prime. And if this I and I prime are similar, suppose you find some similarity metric on this, and if it is some t, right? Okay, if it is more than some threshold t, then you can say that this quality is good. And this is binary way. Suppose you want to measure the percentage of quality, then accordingly you can get the similarity value and normalize to 100. Take this and normalize to 100. That's what we mean by the signal strength is 100 or 80 or 90, like that. Right. So some similarity metric is required for measuring the quality of I prime when its corresponding original image I is available. Right. That's what used in set-top box. But there are places where the reference image may not be available. We will see that. But in communication scenario, in set-top box scenario, it is available. It is stored in the local memory of the set-top box. Let us see some more applications of image quality assessment. In telecommunication, it is used, right, when we... Yeah, any query? You can stop me at any point in time and ask me. But if you switch on your mic, you have to speak to me only. Otherwise, it will be disturbing everybody. Right. So in telecommunication scenario, you see that the data is transmitted from one end to another end, and one end to many ends. Right. That's what we make communication, right? Broadcasting, right? And so in that case, what happens is that we do image compression or video compression. Any compression will reduce the quality of the image if it is lossy compression. We usually will go for lossy, because lossless compression is not going to reduce the data much. So therefore, in telecommunication area, this image quality is a vital thing because of the issue, affected by the compression, lossy compression. And of course, in satellite images, the camera will be installed in the satellite, and that will capture the images and send to the base station for the processing purpose. So there are two-way communication, right? The actual ground truth information is coming from the earth and going to the sensor called camera. There again, from the camera, it is signal values are transmitted to the ground station. So two communications happening, and in these two communications, there's a huge, it's a large probability that you will get, the signal distorted, and because of natural, issues like lightning and other things, any electromagnetic, interference will affect the signal, right, transmission. So in satellite images also, there is a chance of reducing the quality of the image. So you need to look at it. And in underwater images also, life under the water is much more than the life above the water. I don't know whether you have heard this phrase or not. We all think that under the water the number of species living is much less compared to what is living in above the water. It's not so. So huge research is going for understanding the species underwater. And for that, lots of cameras used capturing, the underwater scenarios, species, and other things like landscape and all that. And there are some issues when you take images underwater. Obviously, the pressure of the water and the motion of the camera. And because of all this, image quality will be affected. How do you know image quality is affected? Just because you are moving the camera, it's not that automatically image quality will be reduced. But you need to check whether image quality is reduced or not. That is the case. Then you need to you have to take the images again by reorienting the camera. So for all these purpose, image quality assessment needs to be done. Of course, in security and surveillance is playing very important role, right? As you may know, in biometric thing, right? So image of the fingerprint is taken, and then features are extracted from that, and that is matched with the features in the database. But in this, where is image quality comes? When you give a thumbprint, right, the quality image taken is not of good quality, then features will not be extracted properly, right? Then the matching will not also happen correctly. So the quality is very important. And in other biometric like face recognition or gait recognition or iris recognition, in all these things, the quality of the data is very important. And of course, in surveillance, like surveillance in the secured area like the airport or railway station or even the home environment, if the camera installed there is not capturing proper images, then you will not be able to track any abnormal events. So for industry automation also, quality plays a major role. Usually for industry automation, the tiny object should be imaged, and so quality has to be very good. It should be of super resolution images. Otherwise, you will not be able to find the crack in the tiny objects that are manufactured. And suppose there is a IV bottle and a transparent bottle, and we need to know whether if there is any foreign particle like hair or something inside, and unless the quality of image is good, the hair which is there inside the bottle, you will not be able to see in the image. When your eyes are not able to see, then the algorithms are not able to detect whether hair is inside or not. These are all coming under the category of industry automation. So image quality is very, very important in that case as well. And so then let us say, you have installed the system, and finally you come to know that system is not working after a few days. And by that time, many products are passed successfully. The quality check was, passed successfully. And later you come to know that because the image, camera did not take good quality image, because of that, the diagnosis is not good, then it will be too late, right? Maybe by that time, all the items would have been transported to various destinations. So what could be the ideal thing? On the go, automatically, whenever the image is taken, you should find the quality of the image and quality is not good, then you need to take the image again. You should not allow the object to go on the conveyor belt. You need to stop it and then take another image like that. That would be an ideal way of doing it. And another area where image quality assessment is useful is to find the depth image. As you know, images will give only the 2D information of the object. But if you want the third dimension information, meaning z-axis distance, we need to do stereo vision. Stereo vision means taking images with two cameras that are aligned as coplanar, and two images will be of same scene, but because the second camera is slightly shifted from the first camera, and you will see slightly different information in the second one. Although scene is the same, information will be slightly different. And using these pair of images, you need to find the x, y, z value of the point in the object. Let's say this garden is there, and you should know in world coordinate system at what location this point is there, at what location this point is there, at what location this point is there. So that you should be able to tell x, y, z. Image is giving only x, y, right? But we need to get x, y, z. So for that, depth image needs to be computed, and for that purpose, the quality of images taken by cameras, pair of cameras, should be very good. Otherwise, depth will suffer. So the factors affecting or affecting image quality are listed here. This is not exhaustive list. These are all some examples of factors. One is compression, as I discussed earlier. As you know, there are two types of compressions. One is lossless, the other one is lossy. Lossless compression doesn't have a problem because if the image quality of the original image is good, and the decompressed image is also going to be good. But if it is lossy compression, then the problem comes. Suppose you have an image I, and you compress that I to some image or data, whatever, di, and then you, during the decompression process, take di, decompression algorithm will take that, and it will give I prime. Okay, and if it is lossless, this I and I prime will be the same. If it is lossy, I prime will be different. Now the question comes, how much it will be different? That we need to identify. For that, we need image quality metrics or algorithms. Second one, transmission of image. So as I told, when you transmit the signal, be it image or speech or whatever signal or any data signal, because of the atmosphere conditions and because of the sensors, because of the antennas, there's a probability that there's a significant probability that the bits will change. And so there are error correction detection algorithms, but still if you if you're not able to detect the error, as you know, even if you use CRC, there is the limit on detecting errors. Suppose the entire stream is full of error, then you'll not be able to detect it. So there is a need to find the quality of the image after transmission. That is why the set-top box is giving that option of finding the signal strength. Right. Next, distortion. What is this distortion? Let us look at a scenario. Let's say I have a very high-end mobile phone, and I captured my face image with my high-end mobile phone. And it is of size, let us say, some 3000 pixels by 2000 pixels. Right? I communicate that to you, but you are using low-end camera. But there, the display device, is accommodating the image buffer of size, let's say, some 500 by 300. So what we need to do, some rescaling should be done. So it is done automatically by the by your mobile phone, software in the mobile phone. So it is doing downsampling on the pixels, right? And in that case, the quality is reduced, isn't it? So what I could see the image on my mobile phone is different from the image that is seen in your mobile phone in terms of quality. Although my face image still you will see, but the quality will be different. This is one scenario. Another scenario, no, your mobile phone is low end, right? Therefore, it is the buffer of the image buffer will be small. Not only that, even the number of levels of colors, a number of different colors that can be displayed may also be less compared to my mobile phone. And because of that also, the quality in color you will not be able to see. See the downsampling in spatial domain, downsampling in the amplitude. Both will be done by your algorithm in your mobile phone, and because of that, the quality will go down. And this is called as distortion. Sometime image will be rotated. Sometime image will be shared. Sometime image will be translated. These are all reasons for the distortion. And you may look at the quality of such transformed image is reasonably okay or not in spite of this distortion. Otherwise, you need to do some processing to invert data. And next thing, low quality camera lens. Right. What I mean is that if the lens is of good quality, as you know, cameras are using convex lens, right? So you know the property of convex lens. I'll write here. So what is the property of convex lens? Suppose you have a object here. You take a point, and so where will this? Let us take a image plane here. Where will this point hit the image plane, or where will this point project the image plane? For that, you need to look at the center of the lens, and you need to connect these 2 points. Sorry, right. By a straight line, not as a curve, and that will hit. And if the point P is the object point, P prime is the image point. Okay. But a good quality lens should have the property that any ray that comes out of the same point should all go to this one. If again, let's say this is parallel to x-axis. This is parallel to x-axis. If that hits here, and this length is focal length, right? If you are able to fix your image plane such a way that that 1 by u plus 1 by v plus 1 by f is satisfied, right? Then all the rays that are emanating from the same point should converge to the same point here. If the lens is not proper, what will happen? Some ray will go somewhere else, something like this, right? Then you'll get a bad quality image. So that's what I mean by saying good quality camera lens will lead to good quality image captured. Otherwise, quality of image is bad. That we need to analyze. Of course, we can manually, take image of, when the camera manufacturer is doing it, and to test it, they will take image and manually they will see. Suppose you want to automate this process, maybe you can use image quality assessment algorithm and see how it goes. Of course, the nature of lighting source. In the daytime, if you take image of the same scene, you will get bright image. In the evening time or in the night time, you'll get different, image, maybe dark. And if there is an automatic algorithm that is going on in your system that is capturing images automatically, doing some image processing automatically, and then responding to the system automatically, and day and night it is working continuously, then if it is working only in the daytime, not working in the night time, then how do you know? Even the daytime, sometime, if it is not sunny, if it is raining or something like that, in that case also the image quality may not be good. So therefore, there should be an automatic way to find out the image quality is good or not. If it is not good, then some image enhancement algorithm can be applied on to this, or recapturing of image can be done. So for this also we need the image quality assessment. Some attributes of good quality image. See, as a human being, when we see, Why do we see an image is good? If it has good sharpness. What do you mean sharpness? The edges are thick, sharp. And second factor, attribute, is absence of noise. If the presence of noise is there, then quality is bad. And absence of noise means good quality. And color. What does it color? Color is attributing, but more the number of colors, better the quality. Lesser the number of colors, lesser the quality. I talk about the amplitude, quantization levels. Right? I hope many of you are from electronics domain, so you know the quantization on the amplitude. Right? And tone reproduction. What does it mean? Let's say that you have a black and white TV, right? Black and white TV, but you have color image. F is a color image. If it display here, color image means there will be three matrices, right? Red matrix, green matrix, and blue matrix. Three matrices will be there. And when it's displayed by a black and white TV, it's only the name is black and white. It is basically displaying grayscale images, right? You all know that. So what it does is that the software that is there inside the TV will, average this three matrices and put that. So because of that, some quality is reduced. Maybe I'll give one more example. Let us say you have a grayscale image now, meaning the pixel values in F is in the range 0 to 255, let's say. But you have a dot matrix printer, meaning printing black and white pixels. Right? So the black and white printer has got only one color, black color, right? By putting the black color, it says 0, and by not putting ink, black ink at that particular point, it says 1. That's interpretation. But with that, it has to simulate all the levels, 0 to 255 levels. It's very difficult, although we do. The printer that you normally use black and white printer is using only one toner, right? The black toner, but still it is printing grayscale images, grayscale text, right? We are doing something known as dethering, and we managed to give the illusion that it is giving grayscale, although only one color is used. Right. So, but in that process also, you will be losing some information. You'll not suppose a printer has got different shades of ink, 0 to 255, and if it is using those shades accordingly, then what you get as an image, that image will be of very good quality. So now with single toner or single color, when you reproduce different shades, then the quality will go down. Presence of distortion is because of scaling or translation, shearing. These are all expected when you do various image processing and when you do some transformation also. So that will also attribute to the quality of image. Yeah. Any queries so far? Let us stop, and I'll take some questions and then I'll start. Okay. Any questions in the chat box? If there is some organizers, there are some organizers available, can find out questions and read it out.
Sir, no questions in the chat box, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So let us move on to image quality assessment methods. The image quality assessment methods are divided into two categories first. One is subjective, the other one is objective. Subjective means if we use a human being to evaluate the quality of image, it is subjective. Because what I see as a good image, you may not see as a good image, right? So it's subject to the human who is looking at it. Objective means, the algorithm-based image quality metrics, right? If the algorithm gives it's good this time, when you run the same algorithm with some other computer, it should not give a bad, right? So consistency will be there. Whereas in subjective, the consistency will not be there. The objective image quality assessment scheme is divided into 3 categories, right? One is a full reference image quality assessment. The second one is reduced reference image quality assessment. The third one is no reference image quality assessment. What is this full reference image quality assessment? You will be given the original image, and you will be given the distorted image, possibly distorted image I prime. You need to find the quality of this I prime with reference to this I, right? For example, you can find a similarity or some distance metric or whatever. So that reference image is available in case of full reference image assessment. Whereas in reduced reference image quality assessment, full I will not be available, but some features of I will be available. And given I prime, you need to get the quality of I prime. So I is not available, some features of I will be available. Given I prime, you need to find the quality of I prime. That's what we made reduced reference. So reduced reference means you are given the features which are reduced information from the whole image. Third category is no reference image quality assessment. There you will not be given I, you will not be given Fi, you will only be given I prime. Given I prime, you need to find the quality of I prime. That's most challenging, and it is finding more applications in practice. Let us take the first kind, full reference image quality assessment. And the left image is a reference image. The right image is a possibly distorted image. Because it is distorted, but in general, we don't know the given image is distorted or not. And one intuition that says those who have studied image signal processing or those who have done any similarity metric computation will jump to find mean squared error between these two, because size of these two are the same, m by n, right? So therefore you can take a pixel here and corresponding pixel here and find the difference, square it, and then take next pixel, find the difference, square it, and sum with the earlier one. Like that you can do for all pair of pixels. Right. So it seems to be okay, but it is not giving a good result. The mean squared error between the reference and test image is this much, right? But how do you know it is good or not? You need to take one more distorted image, and if the human being says that the first distorted image is more distorted, then the score should be coming accordingly. The formula for the mean squared error, as you know, is given here. This is the reference image. This is the image to be taken for finding the quality, and find the corresponding pixels difference and square it and sum them all and divide it by size of the image. So R is given, I is given, therefore you can compute this. But the problem with this MSE is that you see here 10 images, right? And just observe carefully. Do you see that they are all of same quality? Some answers to check whether you're connected with me or not. As a human being, do you feel that all are of same quality?
No, sir.
No. Right. But if you look at the MSE values, for all this, 255 came as MSE value, mean squared error. Right. So then what does it mean? the MSE measure is not aligned with human perception. So which means we need to look at some other metrics. One such metrics is PSNR. This is also age old like MSE. And this PSNR is basically used in a set-top box. Maybe sometime some latest set-top box would have used some other algorithms. Don't tell me later that no sir, that set-top box is using some other algorithm. The majority of the set-top boxes using PSNR still today. So what is this PSNR? This is also requiring the reference image, and it is trying to find the distorted image quality. And for this image, the PSNR value comes up to be 22 point something. Usually, PSNR value more than 40 is accepted. It's a reasonably good quality. But the range is going up to infinity. But even 40 plus is also of good quality image. Let us see the formula. Maybe you can look at the first one. The other two are just expansion of that. The first one will be more intuitive. See, in PSNR also you are finding only MSE. That is the only variability. And in the numerator, you have pixel intensity value and you square it. What is pixel intensity value? Maximum pixel intensity value. That's a mistake. Maximum pixel intensity value. Let's say 255 is the maximum pixel intensity value, and 255 square will come in the numerator. Right. MSE will always be less than or equal to 255 square, isn't it? Right. So therefore, the term which is inside the bracket is always less than or equal to 1. Greater than or equal to 1. Therefore, for values greater than or equal to 1, the logarithm will be high if this is high, it's monotonically increasing. Right. Therefore, if the conclusion is that if MSE is less, then PSNR is high. They are inversely proportionate. Agreed? Right. But you may be asking, why do you say that when MSE is not working, this PSNR is working? So what you see here, MSE is basically normalized here with the help of this division, and it is rescaled with the help of logarithm. Dynamically, it is rescaled, and then if you see that the rescaled version it may be of smaller values, then you can multiply with 10, and so in practice it is found that PSNR is working better than the mean squared error. Then full reference image quality assessment is done by some other method called SSIM, third method. It's basically structure similarity index measure. It's not only looking at the color, but it's also looking at the structure. And for this distorted image, with reference to this one, the SSIM is coming like this. And if you look at the formula for SSIM, there are 3 components. 1, 2, 3. Right? So it is involving luminance component, contrast component, and structure component. So luminance is basically related to the light variation. Contrast is the difference between background and foreground, and structure is the shape of the object, and they're all modeled like this. Again, I use the word model, not definition. The reason is the luminance can be modeled by something else also, contrast can be modeled by something else also, structure can be modeled by something else also. But the authors of this SSIM paper, they model like this, right? And if the intensity value is high, the luminance will be high, and similarly, if the the variance is high, the standard deviation is high, and contrast will be high, and similarly here also the structure is also different in terms of that. So let's not go into the details of this, otherwise we'll be missing our machine learning part. I'm just telling why we want machine learning algorithm. So for that purpose, I'm going through the spectrum of some standard image quality metrics, and then we'll go to the machine learning algorithms. And even this, SSIM is not, predicting the score correctly as our eye sees. Therefore, in literature, there are many machine learning algorithms given. One is NAQ algorithm, and that is giving score like this. If you see this, your perception is matching with this. See, more the score, score over the quality. That is how this NAQ is defined. Right? You can see, this is good quality, good, bad, worse. Right? You can see that NAQ score is less for this, right? So it's aligned. So what I try to say, the machine learning algorithm called NAQE is giving a good, reliable image quality metrics compared to the traditional non-machine learning methods. These are all non-machine learning methods. So the topic for this topic, this talk is to sell the application of machine learning in place of image quality assessment. You may be wondering why it is coming under this 5G category. In 5G category, what is can you tell one of the main objectives of 5G? One of the main objectives of 5G is to send the signal, video and image quickly, without loss or without much loss. But when you want to send it quickly, when you need to increase the bandwidth, what happens? You may end up doing more compression, right? That may degrade the quality of the image more. So there should be a check and balance, right? You need to check quality of image is okay or not when you are greedy about getting more bandwidth, and if okay quality is obtained and you are achieving the desired bandwidth, it is okay. So for that we need to understand the quality of image. That is where it is coming under the 5G category. You can say that. Well, there is another machine learning algorithm called BRISC. This BRISC algorithm is also machine learning algorithm giving the output of the prediction, which is in line with the human perception. Right? You can see that this is less, right? And and this is in between. This is coming in between. Okay. So you can see that the very first image is good, and this image is bad. This is worst. You may be wondering why this middle one is the worst. See, middle one is more blurred, although the third one has got some salt and pepper noise, right? But the middle one is blurred. The blurring is more dangerous, and because the edges are not sharp, at least their edges are sharp. So BRISC is also giving reasonable output in terms of aligning with human perception. This is also machine learning approach. And another machine learning approach that is found to work well in practice is PIQE, perception based image quality evaluated. So this is also going aligned with the previous one, right? And this is the worst. This is bad, this is good. And you can see that for the worst one, the value is high. For the good one, the value is low. It's basically computing kind of error. Error is less, quality is good, no, that way. And you can see, some textures. For example, if you look at textures here, that's missing, right? Invisible, but here it is very clear. So therefore, some noise is present here, but still you'll be able to see some texture information, the edge information nicely here. Therefore, this is better than this. Okay, so far we have looked at what is done in the literature. Now we will see our own algorithm in this direction. If there is any doubt, you can ask me. I'll give you some 2 minutes time. You can type it in the chat box. You feel uncomfortable in talking to me. Yeah. Any question? Volunteers, organizers, can you look at the chat box? Since I'm in presentation mode.
Sir, no questions in the chat box.
Okay. Then.
Yes, sir.
Let's continue. So let us look at a couple of machine learning algorithms for the task of assessing image quality. First one is based on wavelet and non-subsampled contorlet transform. Right. And this is falling under the category of no reference image quality. Meaning, what will be given? Image will be given. We need to find quality of image. Right. So this is a bit challenging problem. Then you may be asking, see if the reference is there, then we can compare I with that reference, and then we can do something. We can tell in what way we can tell the quality of I is good or not. You know, we will be mimicking what human being thinks. That is where the machine learning algorithm comes. What is the definition of machine learning algorithm? The way human solves problem, if you mimic in algorithm design, then that algorithm is called as machine learning algorithm. Right. And given an image, we will be able to say image is good or bad. You know, those days when we watched a movie in 1 second, so I'll say nice. Yeah. When the movie comes into the village theater, and all the film will be kind of damaged like anything. So when movie is screened using that film and video, movie quality will be very, very bad, and we will say that it is very bad. How do we say that? We are not using any algorithm to find out quality of the movie. The print is very bad, we will say, because our eyes have seen the good quality videos and bad quality videos, and that relationship is learned and stored in the brain, and with that information we are able to tell even the image or video is of good quality or not. So that we want to mimic in algorithm design. That is called as machine learning algorithm. We will see how it goes. As I told, we are using two transforms for extracting features. One is wavelet transform. As you all may know, wavelet transform goes like this. Given the image I like this, you divide. In fact, you apply low pass filter and downsample and put it here. Apply high pass filter on the original image, downsample, put it here. And then for this, you apply low pass filter and downsample, put it here. Apply high pass filter on this and downsample by factor 2, put it here. Similarly, for this also you do. So if size of this is m by n, size of this is also m by n, and this is one wavelet, right? One level wavelet transform. One level. Now to get the second level, you take only the first quarter, and whatever you have done, you repeat on that like this. So this will be called as second level wavelet transform output. Okay, right. And if you look at the features of this, you will see that this will have almost all the information. Like suppose my image is taken here, I is my image. Then you will see my image here, my face image here. When what will be in the rest of the places, this will be having some noise information, edge information. This will be close to edge information, like that. You will see some example. You can see here. If you apply wavelet on this, you see one level wavelet transform output, and the first quadrant is keeping the same image, almost same image. And if you see here, this is capturing the edge information and also the noise. So why we need to look at this wavelet? In many research papers, you would have seen if it is good paper, why they are taking that features. Why not other transforms? Why wavelet transform? Is the standard question. To answer that, you just look at this noisy version. See the same image is called as Lena image. This photo is very famous photo, and if an image processing algorithm is found to work on this well, with high probability it will work on all other images also. The reason is that it has got all sorts of variations, like smooth regions, very sharp regions, and slightly sharp regions, and almost all the shades. So it's a very nice image taken. And so for this image, if you add some noise, if you take noisy image, and then if you take a two-dimensional wavelet transform on this, and if you display, you get this. Right. So just compare the wavelet of noisy version, wavelet of the original version. In the original version, you just look at the fourth quadrant. Here also you look at the fourth quadrant. What is the difference you see? Here you see nice edges, right? That is missing, right? Okay, because noise information is dominating here. As I told, this portion is dedicated for both noise and edges. And you may say then it should also come as edge. Because noise is dominating, edge is not clearly shown there. So let us look at the other transform which we have used. Non-subsampled contourlet transform. And let me give the scheme like a wavelet. Given the image, we can do the transformation in different scales called multi-scale decomposition. What we basically do, we take a low pass subband like this, and then we filter the image, right? And then we take a band pass like this and filter the image. And we take another band pass, we filter the image. Another band pass, we filter the image. You see that the filter sizes are in different, right? Therefore, we say that multi-scale filters or multi-scale decomposition done using those filters. And then you get an output, right? So in the output, we look at, in this case, we don't look at direction. In this case, we look at some directions, meaning the output filtered image, you take it as 4 components, meaning we are considering 4 directions, in other words, right? And take some metrics on this. Let's say the average values on this, average values on this, average values on this, average values on this, like that. Similarly, for this also, you can divide like this, and you can take average values. Like that, we can get the features. So the transform will be like this only, but from the transform to get the feature, you can get the average value of this, average value of this, average value of this, average value of this. Right. Similarly, average value of this, average value of this, all that. And you can combine them as a feature vector, and you can use it for the learning purpose. One more pictorial representation. The decomposition is not unique. Unlike even what wavelet is not unique, right? You can do the division as you wish. So image is input, and we take the high pass subband, and we take the directional thing on this. Meaning on this we take these directions, and we get some metrics on every segment, and that will be the output of band pass, direct and sub band coefficient. Similarly, in this case, low pass is taken, and again we take the direction on that, and so we take these two, and for this we apply this directional, and for this without applying direction. Without applying direction means you are keeping only one direction, and many directions if you apply, then you need a segment like this. So like that. So you can consider this, and you can apply some average measure on each of the segment, and you can stitch all those things together. In general, if we have a filtered image as this is a filtered image, and you can divide that into many segments. Here it is divided into, I think, 16 segments. They are called as 16 directions, in other words. Right. And then what you can do, you can take a coefficient in this, and take average of those coefficients, say call it as 1. Similarly for this C2, C3, C4 and so on, then you can pack all the C1, C2, 3, C16, and this is the feature vector representing the image. Right? What is the advantage of this? Here you have only 16 numbers, but here if the image size is 1000 by 1000, 1 MB size, but here it is only 16 into 8, 16 bytes size. So the representation is very short, precise, but it is capturing essential information about the image. Why is it so? Because the high pass filter will give the edges, the low pass filter will give the detailed information, the smooth homogeneous information, and so we keep doing low pass filtering, high pass filtering in different compositions and different scales. We'll get different informations. You can save them in the form of feature vector like C1, C2, C3, and so on, C16, and you can use this as the descriptor. So one more way of doing this, feature extraction is, given the image, you can take low pass, high pass. In that low pass output, you can do the low pass again and band pass. And in the low pass output here, you can do low pass, band pass, and here you can take directly. This you can take directly. You have this many, filtered images. See, these are all of same size. M by N, M by N, M by N. Image size is same after filtering, right? Then if you can do some calculation of metrics, like if you apply the directional thing, you can get 16 coefficients here, 16 coefficients here, 16 coefficients here, 16 coefficients here. You can concatenate them, or you can take the average of all this. Both are allowed. And whichever is found to work well for you, you can choose that. Right. So the model used for fitting the wavelet coefficients. So what does it mean? Given the image I, if you apply wavelet transform, you'll get some I prime. We'll say that I prime has got wavelet coefficients. Again, matrix, it's also a matrix. We say wavelet coefficients, right? And assume that they are all real values, okay? And if you look at the histogram of those values, it may go like this. Let's say this is real axis, and this is histogram. And if you assume that the histogram is normalized histogram, then it is called as probability density function. PDF, right? And so corresponding to the given I, you get one probability density function like this. But that may have arbitrary shape. But when we observed various Liouville coefficients histograms, histogram, this AGGD, what is it? Asymmetric generalized Gaussian distribution is fitting that well, right? This is what AGGD is. AGGD is. See, here I have shown in 1D, but it's shown here in 2D. Right? It's not exactly the bell-shaped curve. It's not the Gaussian curve. It's slightly skewed, right? And we fitted the coefficients of wavelet with Gaussian and with other distributions also. But we found that this AGGD is fitting very well. That is the observation. So in research, you need to make an observation. Basically, in experimental research, you need to make an observation. And based on observation, you need to proceed. Even in theory, unless you observe, you cannot prove a result, right? Theorem you cannot prove. So observation is very important. So how do you do the observation? We need to do various trial and error, methods, examples you need to consider, various examples, and then you see which one is working well. And after observing the pattern, then you can formalize it. Either you can write an algorithm and get the results, and there you need to give accuracy, precision, recall like that. Or if you want to prove the correctness of it, you can formulate the statement of the observation, and then you can prove that formulation. Right. So we got two features, right? Two sets of features. One is using wavelet, the other one is using the AGGD. When we fit the AGGD has got 4 parameters. And the values of those parameters are the features that is coming out of this I. Now we got a feature vector, right? One 16-dimensional feature vector from the non-subsample controller transform, and 4-dimensional feature vector from the other one. So you have a feature vector of dimension 20, right? And now that feature vector should be labeled properly before giving into the machine learning model. So we are using a regression model. What is regression? Regression will take input X and gives continuous values or output, meaning the C will belong to some set of real numbers. Whereas in classification, it will take X as input, it will give C, where C belongs to some labels, categories, finite labels, right? But image quality metric value is not finite, so it's a regression problem. So we used support vector regression for our analysis, and support vector regression is modeled like this. Let's say the true ground truth image quality predictor is given here. The ground truth is given here in black line, and right. Let us say that. What your prediction can be? It can be it can have error, but not more than epsilon error, right? So your prediction should also be a straight line in this case, but the error that is coming out of that predicted straight line should not be more than epsilon. Maybe within this strip you can have any straight lines. That's what the algorithm says, right? So the formalization of a problem is that we need to minimize the width W, weight vector W, such that this condition is satisfied, because we want to have error less than epsilon, therefore this condition is there, right? And for positive and negative samples, for the other sample, you need to have like this. Okay, what do you mean positive negative samples? Yi is taken as 1 for positive, yi is taken as -1 for negative sample. Positive one means is a good quality image, negative one means not good quality image, like that. Okay. So let us look at the feature extraction steps. In the first step, given the image, we apply non-subsample contour transform. We get the mean coefficients at scale 5. What does it mean? You know that contour transform will also go into stages, right? We do 5 stages. And then finally we'll get 16 dimensional vector, right? By finding the means as I explained that you take. And so that you give us an output. FV1 is the output of this process, which is representing this image. Similarly, the same image is represented by this 4-dimensional vector with the help of wavelet followed by asymmetric generalized Gaussian distribution values, parameter values. There are 4 parameters, therefore 4 dimensional vectors. So this is another feature vector. So you let's say feature vector F1 here, F2 here, and feature vector FV is concatenation of FV1, comma FV2. Not writing. Yeah, fine. FV1, FV2. Concatenation, right? So the same thing is put in a formal form. So take an image of size this and do the 5-level decomposition and then get the feature vector. And in the second step also, you do the AGGD based feature vector computation, and you'll get 2 feature vectors. You join them together to get 20-dimensional feature vector. So whatever I explained is put in words, nothing more. Let us look at the training phase. In the training phase, we take a feature vector of dimension 20 by 20, right? And we give mean opinion score for the image. Let's say for the image I, we get a feature vector of dimension 20 and mean opinion score. What is it? You know, for the training machine learning algorithm, we need ground truth, right? Let's say we have a database involving n images, n maybe million or whatever, and human being will have to give score from 0 to 10 for each image. Let's say 1 for this I2, some 9 for I3, some 7, like that. And this is given by person 1. Like that, person 2 will also give his own score. Person 3 will also give his own score. And all this will be, for first image, all the values will be averaged out. For the second image, all the values will be averaged out, right? Like that. And such average values is called as mean opinion score. Right? So, for example, for I1, average of all the values given by all the persons is the mean opinion score. So that should be computed and made available in dataset, and there are many datasets built that way. So you can give to the support vector machine, support vector regression, the feature vector and the corresponding score, and the machine will learn from this, and it will give a regression parameter. In other words, it will give the learned model. Giving parameter is same as giving learned model. If you know the parameters, you can say you have learned the model. During the testing phase, you take the learned model, right? You keep it here, learned model, and when test image is coming, take that 20-dimensional feature vector as we explained, right? And give some parameters for regression, right? This may be useful, but even without this also you can still do. And for example, how that epsilon I told, you can tell what is this epsilon. That's what parameter is. and support vector regression will take this feature vector and this epsilon, and it will give the quality of the image. It will give some value that is interpreted as the quality of image. Why it should be okay? Because support vector machine is trained to learn the relationship between the human opinion score and the image given. So therefore, when it is given with unknown image, unseen image, it will give quality reasonably. Right. And the image quality prediction algorithm is given in a proper way. So you input this image feature vector, image quality, score is the output, and what we do, we train first. We train first, and for training the model, we use radial basis function, and then we test it, and the results obtained is presented here. So what is this SROCC, PLCC, RMSE? These are all metrics. These two are correlation coefficients, and this is root mean squared error. And this has to be high for good quality image, and this has to be low for good quality image. Okay. And what is given in this column are all databases. Sorry, different methods. Right, JNB is one method, CP, BD is one method, this is one method. And what is given in this second row, right? These are all databases. In fact, 3 databases are there. Live, CSIQ, TID 2013. When JNB method available in literature, when it is implemented on a live data set with 80-20, 80% for training and 20% for testing, it is giving this much accuracy. For this data set, it's giving this much accuracy. For this, it is giving this much accuracy. And the same JNB is used. Accuracy means SROCC score. Right. And when it is used on the same data set, when we use different metric for finding the accuracy or whatever similarity or quality, we use PLCC in that case. We get these values and these values. How do we know this is good or bad? If the correlation is very high, it's good. If the mean square error is less, it is good. And see, for this, good values are there, but here not so good. So like that, for every method, their performance is reported. And what we discussed is put in the last row, proposed method. And you can see that in the live data set, SROCC is giving good value for our method. And the SROCC value of our method on CSQ data set is also good. In fact, best among all this. Here also best among all this. Best among all this. Right? Okay. And in PLCC also, in case of 2 data sets, live and CSIQ, the proposed model is good. But in the third data set, 2013, the proposed model is not doing that well. Although good, but it's not that well. The best one is the other model called DCT Mars model. And coming to RMSE, in 2 data sets, ours is good. In 1 data set, the DCT Mars is good. Right. So the database independence test, why it is required? See, when we take the same data set and using the same data set for training and testing, although we divide the same data set into two parts with 80-20 ratio, the data set is created by a single person or a team of people, right? They have they would have got some biasness in creating the data set. Let's say they have taken the images of only Europeans, that biases will be there. All the different people would have taken, but not of different races. Usually in same data set, this bias will be there. Therefore, it is better to train a model on one data set and test it on completely different data set. That is called as cross database or data set validation, or database independent test. So when our model is trained on TID 2013, tested on the other data sets, live and CSIQ, we got these metrics for correlations, and for CSIQ we got this. So only in KLCC we have less correlation. In other places we get very high correlation, which means the generalizing capability of the model is good. If this database independence test fails, meaning it is, let's say, for 0.5, 0.6, something like that, then you can say that generalization capability is less. On live data set, when it is trained, you see in 2 data sets it's very high, but in 1 it is low. Here also in 2 very high, 1 it is low. And CSK is tested on this, 2 high, 1 low, 2 high, 1 low. So what it simply says is that the proposed model is very good in terms of generalizing capability when we look at 2 data sets, but in the other one, although it is doing reasonably well, but not very good. Right. And different distortion types we considered, like blur, some kind of noise, F noise, JPEG compressed and decompressed, JPEG 2000 compressed and decompressed, fading, and white noise and so on. So why we need to do this testing? When we add more noise of each of this type, our metric should go down, isn't it? Right. In this case, the correlation of different types and RMSE is done. So what basically happens is that we take n images, we take a human opinion score for each image by applying this noise, right? These are all noisy versions. And in that case, our proposed algorithm is matching with this human opinion score. So what it simply says is that when more noise is added, whatever human perceives is matched with what the algorithm says as output. That is why very high correlation here, and reasonably high correlation here, and very low RMSE here. These are all compared to the human opinion score. I think I want to stop with this because I don't have sufficient time to complete another application. Maybe I'll take up some questions. If there is no questions, I will move on to the second one. Any question?
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, here how the JPEG
Okay.
distortion type and correlation of this one is achieved as a lowest or highest. So, can you comment on this?
Yeah, actually, we should not compare between these two or whatever. So I just recall what I told. Let us say we have, let me rewrite again. So if I understood your question correct, so what you're asking is that why for noisy version the scores are very high. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So let us take good quality images I1, I2, IN. These are all good quality images, n different images. Okay. Now you take their noisy versions. Let us say we take JPEG. We compress this I1 and decompress this I1, right? When you decompress, what happens? You'll get I1 prime, I2 prime, and so on, IN prime. Agreed? Now, let the human give the opinion score for this I1 as S1, I2 as S2, IN as Sn. Right? Let our algorithm give some score, let's say S1 prime, S2 prime, Sn prime. Okay? If this is almost close, these are almost close, then we can say that our algorithm is giving good result, right? The correlation high means, the respective values are almost close. That's it. So the correlation is not quantifying the amount of noise there, rather it is quantifying the similarity between what human observes and what our algorithm gives. Agreed?
Yes, sir. Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
And sir, what about this white noise and AWGN noise and its effect on getting the output? Is it related to power or some disturbances, so that we'll get better output or best output at the output end?
No, actually, these noises will be added in nature in various scenarios, right? For example, blurring will happen when the camera is not manufactured properly. So let us say 1 by U plus 1 by V equal to 1 by F is the equation, right? The lens formula. If that is not satisfied, blurring will happen. Or if you shake when you take the photo, that time blurring will happen. Or when you walk and keep taking photo, then blurring will happen. So like that, there are some scenarios where each of these noises will happen, right? But our objective is to give the machine learning algorithm which will predict the quality which is aligned with what human being says, right? It is not quantifying the noise here, rather it is matching with what human being says. That is what this SROCC, PLCC, KLCC, these are all correlation coefficient formula.
Okay. And in this distortion type or correlation, SROCC, PLCC, and KLCC, RMSE, which is the best one, or which is better, and which is worst one?
In fact, RMSE is of different kind, right? Because there we are calculating the error, whereas here we are talking about the rank order, right? Even in PLCC and KLCC, the correlation information we are capturing, right? And so suppose you want to consider the ranking similarity, this is better. In general, we cannot say one is better than the other. Depending on the situation only you can say. So if you are worried about the ranking similarity, then SROCC is better. Otherwise, PLCC and KLCC are to be used, because they are using the common information, whether they are correlated or not, it is checking. Yeah, any other query? Okay, let me go through quickly on application. Yeah, so the next part, maybe it will take 5 minutes or 10 minutes quickly, I'll take. See, the idea is that, YouTube service provider will love to use this. That's the idea. And what is the algorithm he has to use? He has to use the algorithm which will say the video is screen captured or not. Right? What is screen captured? If the movie is displayed on screen, if you use a mobile camera to take a video of that screen captured thing, then you upload it. That should be stopped, So video that is taken with handheld devices or with any device of the displayed video on the screen is called a screen captured video, and we need to detect that. So when the user is trying to upload it, and our model will predict whether it is screen captured or not. If it is not, if it is normal video, then it will go and sit in the, it will be allowed to sit in the database of YouTube. Suppose it is not screen captured, then some human expert working for YouTube will recheck that. And if they find yes, it is screen captured, then they will block, and they will take some action against that user also, because screen capturing and uploading is an illegal activity. So they will take action also. Right? They will inform the law enforcement agency. So this is the whole scenario, use case. Now what we need to do, we need to check whether the given video is of screen captured or not. If you see these two columns, in the first column you see original frames are there, and the second column, the corresponding screen captured. So we just displayed on the laptop, and we took the image using mobile phone. And you can see that this is bad compared to this. This is bad compared to this. This is bad compared to this. Got it? So which means the quality of screen captured video or image will be poor. And therefore, if you could use image quality metrics and do some learning between image quality metrics and yes or no of screen capture status, then you can use that. And for that, we use NAQE machine learning algorithm for predicting the image quality metric, and also we use something else also. But what it is basically doing is that it is modeling the scene natural statistics, right? What is it? If you look at any real world object, any two consecutive points will be very similar, maybe similar, same color or very close color, and so on. So that property is captured and learned, and so the NAQ algorithm is giving the image quality metric value for the given image. And another metric called ISM BFD, image sharpness measure for blurred image in frequency domain. What it is basically doing is that it is quantifying the number of high frequency components. The T is number of high frequency components, and it is normalized with image size, and this will be very high when the noise is more. It is low when the noise is less. And similarly, you can talk about the frequency component by taking the discrete cosine transform instead of Fourier transform. In the earlier case, we took Fourier transform, DFT we took, and instead of that, you can use DCT also, and again you can get the normalized one. So now we got three features, right? One is this NAQE, DCT, this one, and ISM BFD. So we can pack all these features as a feature vector, and we can train the SVM model using this. But along with this, you'll give a label. So how do you get a label? We need to generate the database with videos and label whether it's screen captured or not. For that purpose, yeah, I'll come to that. Okay. I think I don't have now. So what we took several images, videos we ran on our laptop, and we took a video of that using mobile camera, and then we generated videos that way, and then we labeled, and then we trained the model, and we tested with extra examples. And so this is the detailed algorithm. It's basically finding these three measures, right? NAQE, ISM BFD, DCT, BSM, and then it is packing. But the difference between what I told earlier and this one is that this is running for video. Video is basically involving many frames, right? For every frame that is done, and then we do some analysis. In a single video, some frames may be of good quality, some frames may be of bad quality, right? And we take middle half, and based on the middle half, we take the feature vector, and we train the model with that middle half of the feature vectors of all the frames in the video. So now for a single video, we have a single feature vector. and then with such video and feature vector and label, we train the model. And similar thing is done in the testing also. And the accuracy is plotted here. I'll explain only one graph. In a similar way, you can understand the other one also. The blue one is screen captured video one. For the video one, the normal one is given here. So you can see that blue is coming below the violet. So no, what we want, blue is coming below green. Take green. So you can see that this is original, right? Blue is screen captured. This is original. This is screen captured. Right. For the original, the values are high. For the screen captured, values are low across the frames. And the accuracy that we got. So detection accuracy is 0.56 bit low. Recall precision. Right? If you use equivalent distance approach, but if you use SVM approach, we are bettering it, but still it is not that good. Anything more than 0.9 is good. The detection time is around 90 seconds in both cases. So what it simply says is that SVM is doing better than equivalent distance based approach. That's all from my side. These are all references. If you have any queries, you can ask. We'll discuss for the next 5 minutes.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Yeah, mine.
Sir, I'm working on VR image quality assessment.
Yeah, okay.
Sir, sir, generally VR image is stored in the form of equirectangular projection, right?
Yeah.
So, sir, for equirectangular projection format, if the left view is on the if the left view is on the top and the right view is on the bottom,
Okay.
then we need to decompose into cube map projection formats, right?
Okay.
Because of the nonlinear characteristics of VR image, we need to decompose into CMP phases.
Okay.
So we had decomposed into 6 phases. After decomposition into 6 phases, for estimating the quality score, we need to pool the weights, right?
Okay. Weights of what?
It's the weights of each phase. Like I had decomposed the left view into 6 phases and right view into 6 phases in order to overcome the nonlinear characteristics of the VR image.
Okay.
Now I need to pool the weights for each phase.
Okay.
I thought of checking with various metrics like Nike, Pikey, all those things I had checked to check which phase is more effective.
Okay.
But I'm not in a stage to conclude which phase is effective. Which
Okay.
phase is more distortion affected.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So to pull the final score, now I need to choose a weighted formula such that the final score will be very high.
Yeah, I understand. So you're assigning weight for each of the view, right?
Yes, sir, each view is.
Right. So what weight you need to assign, you need to know. For
Yes,
that
sir.
only, even simple linear model will work for that, right? Okay. So you're asking how we can proceed. For that, you need to generate the database first. As a human being, right? Whatever you feel that you need to store.
Sir, actually, I'm working with live 3D VR Activate database.
Correct. That is for the testing purpose. Testing
Yes,
and
sir.
validation, that will be there.
Yes, sir.
But when you want to train the model, you need to give the label ground truth. How to generate the ground truth? You need to generate from human opinion score only. No other go. If human being is not able to detect the quality of the image, then the
Yes.
algorithm also will not be able to detect it.
Yes.
Because we don't have the reference image. If the reference image is there, human being is not required.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So what is required in this case is that you need to generate the images with human opinion score,
Oh, okay, sir.
right? And that list should be learned by some machine learning model to give the weights.
Okay, sir.
So no
Thank
other.
you.
Bye.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Sir.
Okay, guys, if there's no other questions, I will wind up. Maybe in another 5 minutes, next session will start.
Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Kirtana,
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, guys. All the best for rest sessions. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. We shall now have a short break. The next session will start by 6:30 a.m. The topic for next session is artificial intelligence for visual surveillance. So kindly fill the attendance and your share your feedback to the feedback box. Thank you.